We did it. It fucking happened. We did it. Like for those of you just joining us, I hope that you're drunk and starting a palm tree on fire somewhere. The Los Angeles Dodgers of Los Angeles are champions for the first time in 32 years. Juan, we fucking did it.
We did it. I mean, look, I was so happy. I mean, I jumped, I cheered. But then what was so crazy to me, and maybe it's just because I'm getting older, was after I let out all the cheering and all that stuff, I found myself getting emotional. I didn't like completely cry, but I felt like I was going to cry.
You know, as I've been traveling all day, as you two know, Roger in the voice in the sky, and your boys Alonso y Juan here, World Series champions 2020. I've been traveling all day. I just got home. A part of the reason we didn't get on right after the game is because we've been having some website issues. So for those of you coming to our website at Bleedlos, check out the Twitter feed, and you can get the World Series merch that our voice in the sky Roger has made for this event, if you will, cataclysmic, because obviously the website has gone to hell. But I was thinking of, like, I have two very, very early memories that I remember from when I was a kid. So I was 2 years old when the Dodgers won the last World Series, and I remember the last out, and that's my first memory. Is that the other time is living in East LA? Someone was trying to steal the ATM across the street from our apartment building. Those are the two memories that I have as a child. My two first memories, and all I could think about was like that memory having that with my dad. You know, obviously because I'm so young. You know, at the time I didn't know the circumstances of it, the importance of it, but that's where my fandom started with this team, and here we are now going full circle, and it's been super tight to hear all of the memories that people are throwing out there as far as like from '88 to now. And as a matter of fact, I have a hat that I refused to wear until they won, and they did it. So I'm gonna pull it out because it has the '88 patch, and I didn't want to jinx it. So to the homies of Born and Raised Spanto, we did it, homie. We're here, we made it, and now LA's on fire, and now I can wear this without having to worry about jinxing anything. How aside from the small minor heart attack that Tony Gonsolin gave us to where we are now, how are you kind of containing yourself, if you will, those last 9 outs, really, because that's when it got super stressful?
Honestly, I was fine the last 9 outs because after they took Blake Snell out, and big thank you to Cash for that decision, but after they took Snell out and they were able to score those 2 runs, I was just like, they got this. They got this. And especially when I saw Urias come out of the bullpen. And once he got through that inning, and his work was, he mowed those guys down. I don't think he even gave up a hit, to tell you. Or maybe he might have given up 1 hit. I don't know. But he was dominant. I love the fact that Robert stuck with him and let him finish the game. And that's why I was stress-free. Like, once we got past Randy Arozarena, I was like, we're going to win this. We're going to win this. Normally, I had this impending doom where I feel we're going to get Niedenfured. It's coming, but I didn't have it in this game. And I think it was maybe because Roger brought this up after the show, after last night's show. But for those of you who don't know, there was a time traveler on Twitter who had predicted 4 years ago that the Rays would beat the Dodgers in 6 games. And we realized last night, hey, the time traveler was wrong. And what I realized is we have now altered the timeline. So it was destined that we were going to win the World Series today. And we did. We're World Series champs.
And I had originally predicted the Dodgers would win in 6, even though I changed my prediction in Rage. But I'm going to stick to my original prediction because that's how this works. The Dodgers win, and Urias did not give up a hit. So Urias, all the credit in the world to Julio Urias, the 24-year-old who has been with the Los Angeles Dodgers since he was 16 years old when he signed back all the way back in 2013 on 27 pitches, 2.1 innings, no hits. And you know what? That was the outing of his life, because obviously he's had the postseason of his life, but that was the outing of his life. and all the credit in the world to him for stepping up. And really, this entire Dodgers bullpen tonight stepped up huge. Obviously, Gonsolin was shaky, didn't even make it out of the second, and Floro and Woody came up huge. Didn't give up
Yes.
any hits. Had big strikeouts there. Alex Wood, what can you say about the dude? The dude has had such an up and down career and an up and down 2020, and steps up huge there and goes 2 on 20 pitches, 16 strikeouts. That's a hell of a ratio, especially when this was not supposed to be a bullpen game at all. And then they go, to Petey Baez, who did give up the one hit. But the thing is that's impressive about all these guys tonight. They, obviously tomorrow, if tomorrow would have happened, all hands would have been on deck. They showed Kershaw getting ready tonight if need be, and I'm glad they didn't go Kershaw, just because we it's one of those things where the poetic justice was already there for him. It's just needed to be closed out, right? But all the credit in the world to these guys for stepping up, knowing full well that the plan obviously was Gonsolin to eat up the bulk of the innings, and they stepped up and had a bullpen game. And here we are with Urias closing it out, and Mookie Betts. Holy crap! Like for Mookie to just give us that insurance, and for not only that bullpen to do what they did, but to be able to contain this Rays team. The thing is the Rays squandered a lot of runners in scoring position, a lot, and the Dodgers, obviously were able to contain them, and that's going to be ultimately the story of the game, is the Dodgers being able to contain the Rays to clinch, because at the end of the day, the Dodgers were the favorite, right? They had the target, and here we are, and we knew all along that this was the team of destiny. And then to add all of all the weirdness of 2020 coming full circle, JT tests positive for COVID, gets pulled, and here we are. Like, what a weird year, man.
Absolutely. I mean, here's the thing about that. The Dodgers win the World Series in Game 6 with basically a bullpen game. Going into this game, the Rays starters their ERA was over 7. Okay. And the Dodgers starters ERA was under 3. I heard that stat and I was like, how was this not a sweep? How did we not sweep the Rays? The difference was in the bullpen. The bullpen's ERA was 1 run less than the Dodgers bullpen's ERA, right? So for the Dodger bullpen to come out there today and be lights out, I mean, it may have cheated it a little bit because Urias threw the last 3 innings, and he was technically a starter who contributed to that starter ERA. But I mean, there was just I'm telling you, after Snell got pulled, it just seemed like a completely different game. I myself, being a Dodger fan, was furious at Cash. I know we were on the wrong end, but these are the type of games I love. I love like the 1-0. I love these pitchers duel, and that kid Snell, he deserved to go until the wheels came off, because the Dodgers weren't showing any signs. Yes, he gave up 2 hits. And if you see Snell's post-game interview, I was surprised. He kind of didn't hold anything back. And, there were so many key moments. Yes, Gonsolin wasn't on, but the fact that Gonsolin was able to limit the damage and only gave up 1 run, I thought was huge. Dylan Floro coming in and getting Randy Arozarena out. Who had that, I didn't. I mean, Alex Wood, I kind of actually was hoping that Alex Wood would have gone longer. I was just like, look, this is going to be the last time we're going to see Alex Wood in the series. He is a starter. Let's see how much he can give you, because the guy was dealing. It was just, the Dodgers bullpen was just fantastic. And one play that I want to point out was when Mookie went from first to third on that wild pitch. That ended up being huge because he scored on the ground out in the next. So it seems that when Mookie came to play, good things happened for the Dodgers in this series.
100% true. And if you're just joining us, if you don't know, I don't know what rock you're under, but the Dodgers have won the World Series, 2020 pandemic champs, 3-1. They beat the pesky Rays. And you know what? Hats off to the Rays. The Rays are going to be they're going to be good for a long time. And the thing is they're so young, and so inexperienced at this level that that's scary. So hats off to the Rays. Well, I'm sure down the line we'll see them, hopefully in another World Series. But the Rays, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with for a long time. To your point with Kevin Cash, this entire offseason is going to be filled with lots of random hot stove topics, if you will. And I'm super curious to see kind of really how the Kevin Cash thing goes down as far as that second guessing of his managerial abilities. Because if there's anyone that really, I guess, is going to get, reamed for it, if you will, is going to be Kevin Cash. Because even Snell coming out didn't look stoked. You could
No.
definitely tell that he was not stoked on life. He was kind of confused. I get it from a baseball standpoint as to why they pulled him, because his stats the third time around are preposterous. There's something, I think his average against is something like 363 or 369. I can't remember the number. So from a baseball standpoint, to limiting offense, because and his other thing is his innings limit is about 6 innings. So he was there. And that's not I'm not going to knock Kevin Cash for that. If anything, it's going to be one of those things where you're kind of protecting your guy, if you will, because obviously at this point, if you're going to die by the sword, you live by the sword, die by the sword, right? So I'm not overly worried about that. However, we touched earlier in this series, especially after Game 4, which definitely could have been that could have been kind of the dagger, if you will, or looked at as a bump in the road. In this case, it ended up being a bump in the road to get to this point. But we talked about the managerial decisions as well of Dave Roberts in that Game 4, and now you look forward to now. It's night and day as far as how Dave Roberts managed this game, managed this bullpen, dealt with the COVID apparently in the midst of a game. So it's going to be one of those things where we talked about it in the previous show to this series way back when. The managerial chess is going to kind of come to the forefront again, and Kevin Cash is probably going to be on a bit of a hot stove. I don't think he's going to be fired about it, but if anything, it's just going to be one of those like coulda, woulda, shoulda, second guessing things. But I mean, the Dodgers took advantage. Someone commented on here, they smelled blood in the water. And here we are, they took advantage. Mookie Betts getting that huge home run, doing the thing. And the Dodgers were able to capitalize on the mistakes. At the end of the day, that's what ended up being the determining factor as to who won the series, who capitalized on the mistakes.
Yeah, part of me now, the more I think about it, everything that you said makes sense in terms of what informed Kevin Cash's decision. But I also wonder if part of it was also he just didn't trust his offense. He didn't think I think he thought one run was going to be enough to win this game if I can get my bullpen guys, to pull through, because he pulled, and we talked about this yesterday where we said that Kevin Cash was going to have a quick hook, for this game. I just didn't think it was going to be that quick of a hook because, okay, I get it at the first sign of trouble, maybe late in the game, you want to pull him. But, I mean, wouldn't you want to go at least one more batter and see? Because, I mean, what if he would have faced Mookie? You look at the numbers, Mookie struggled against left-handed pitching this year. And especially his slugging against left-handed pitching. So I don't know if maybe the Rays didn't scout that accurately, but what if you did leave him in there and he was able to get a double play out of Mookie, right? And now, you're still holding on to that 1-0 lead, and you don't have to cover that many innings for the rest of the game. So I am curious to see. I mean, I saw the interview that he had with Rosenthal. He never discussed any of that. But I wonder if in the back of his head, he just did not trust his offense to score any runs against the Dodgers.
Well, and interestingly enough, I will admit I was a little surprised they went to Nick Anderson right then and there, because he's been a little gassed, if we're honest, over the last few days. They've used him quite a bit, or as I heard on the broadcast, liberally. Especially for a guy in his position. It's got great stuff, right? But I mean, if a guy is gassed, the guy is gassed. And I'm super surprised they went to Anderson there, and Fairbanks came in and got roughed up as well. So I mean, it's going to end up being that managerial kind of chess that's going to come to the forefront. But you know what? now no one can ever talk trash about Dave Roberts, at least for the rest of 2020, because he came out and did the thing.
He bought himself another good 7 to 8 years. Yeah, well, maybe it might be a little less because it's a different era, but when you sit there and you look at it, all those years that Tommy didn't win, losing in 77 and losing in 78, and he finally won in 81, and then he won again in 88, but then after 88, there was nothing, and so I think this has definitely bought him some years, and who knows, I'm just so glad that they won one. Okay, because I just think this would have looked very differently. If you look at that Braves team from the 90s, yes, they won so many divisions, and people always bring up the fact that they won so much, but they only had one championship to show for it. Well, guess what? They had that championship. The Dodgers, up until this point, didn't have anything at all that they could show for their success. So, yeah, I'm so happy for so many guys. Kershaw. I'm bummed that Turner wasn't able to celebrate on the field with the rest of the team. I mean, that really sucked. But I'm just, for Kershaw and especially Kershaw had a good postseason. Can I argue that Corey Seager, with Corey Seager getting the MVP, maybe there was a part of me that was just like, why not give it to Kershaw? He won 2 games. In the World Series. His ERA was under 3. I think it ended up being 2 point something. Wow, I mean, what do you think about the Corey Seager getting the MVP?
So I actually was thinking, just because of the the adversity, if you will, I thought that they were going to give it to Kershaw, and not just adversity this year, but just years past. But at the same time, I don't think they give a damn, because they just wanted one and they got the one, and here we are. Obviously, Corey Seager is very deserving of it. Corey had himself a postseason to remember. I can't remember the other players on the list because obviously I'm overwhelmed with the Dodger emotion. But of the 10 guys that shortlisted as far as home runs, RBIs, and an average in the postseason and in the World Series, he's top 4. So it's one of those where it's like, you know what, the dude's an MVP. I mean, and the other thing too is, the other storyline, let's not forget the series before this, the Dodgers were down 3-1.
Yes.
And they came back and grinding it out. And this was also a series where they had to grind it out. And in my opinion, in being the purist, if you will, to a certain degree, the 2 best teams in all of baseball, the Dodgers with the best record, the Tampa Bay Rays with the second best record, go head to head in the World Series. They bang it out, and the Dodgers pull it off in what potentially could have been a 7-game series, right? So the Dodgers were able to just overcome, leaps and bounds of adversity to get to this point. And let's not forget, it's a pandemic season. So, I mean, these dudes have been in a bubble for the last month, 3.5 weeks, something like that. Obviously they had the stoppage from spring training all the way back in, February, Valentine's Day to now. So, I mean, it's just been adverse, event after adverse event. And here we are, finally celebrating the thing that every Dodger fan wanted to celebrate. And the Dodgers, to their credit, grinded it out, stuck together, were able to just overcome all of that adversity. Had guys opt out in David Price. I mean, it could have gone sideways real quick with anything. They grinded every single series out to get to this point, and here we are. You know what's a crazy stat, though? The Dodgers this season have more home runs than the Texas Rangers do at Globe Life Park.
Yeah, the Dodgers definitely turned that stadium into their own. Do you think that played any factor into it, the fact that they played 3 series there?
Maybe, I mean, I think a lot of it is, if I'm honest with you, I think kind of like we've all been looking for a distraction, if you will, from what's going on outside of in the real world, or like you said, the world is burning, and it is to a certain degree, right? I think for the Dodgers, it's kind of the same thing, because, they get to Texas and they're told a whole lot of no's. They can't do this. They can't go there. They can't go here. Can't go there. Can't go anywhere. And the one distraction that they have is to actually get on the field every day. So I think in a weird twist of fate, if you will, I think it ended up being like they didn't care where they were going to play. They just wanted to play because it kind of was able to really just give him a distraction from the real world stuff going on. Obviously, those guys that had COVID. AJ Pollock had COVID. Kenley
Yeah.
Jansen had COVID, and apparently he wasn't just a mild case of COVID either. And so it's now Justin Turner apparently has COVID. So I mean and those are the only ones that we know, right? But it's one of those things where it definitely could have gone sideways really quick. And here we are, and similar to the Lakers, similar storylines where they trade in the offseason for a superstar, the Lakers for Anthony Davis, the Dodgers for Mookie Betts, and they both are overcome their adversity as well. That the Lakers mid-season have to have their season shut down. The baseball season hadn't started yet, and now we're here. So I mean, it's just one of those things where it's just kind of a testament to the character of this team. And one thing I wanted to point out, for me, having been in the clubhouse, seeing how the players interact, front offices, etc. When Dave Roberts gave Ross Stripling a shout out, that told me right there how close knit this team was, and also the importance of the character of this team. And to me, I know for Ross, I'm sure that's going to mean the world to him and then some. But it's one of those things where it just shows you how close these guys were and how hard they had to grind out to get to this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's just, a lot of things. I mean, you got to sit there. Yeah, I kind of feel bad for poor Ross Stripling. He's probably sitting there. And what's so great, and it's a tribute to him as a person, I bet you he was rooting for the Dodgers. I bet you Ross Stripling wanted this so bad. I think of guys like Jock Peterson, who at the beginning of the year was traded to the Angels. He might not have been a part of this. I mean, I'm just so happy for all of these guys. AJ Pollock at the beginning of the year was debating whether to even play the season. He had just had a child, and his wife told him, "Are you going to be okay with the fact if they win the World Series?" And look what happened. They ended up winning the World Series, and now Pollock gets the ring. But I am so happy for Julio Urias. There were so many seasons here ago that we should have traded him, right, to get somebody to put us over the top. And now it paid off. Friedman, as much as we want to criticize Friedman has kept the good players. He's traded away. Like, the guy has not missed, in my opinion, so far. The players that he has kept are the ones that got us here, and the ones that he traded helped us get here. So, I mean, I'm just so happy for Urias, and Friedman makes us competitive every year. So congratulations to him. It finally paid off. We're champs. Yes. I mean, but that was the plan, right, Roger? That was the plan. These guys were going to give us a championship. Yeah.
So I was gonna go to that in a second, but real quick, there's two quotes that I want to bring up. Speaking of kind of the full circleness, if you will. Kenley Jansen, who's been a Los Angeles Dodger since 2006, I believe. He just said, "I feel like I'm a true Dodger now." End quote.
Yeah.
And you know what, that dude, I've had the opportunity to interact with him. Couldn't be a better person. Dude's a quality human. Does a lot in the community in LA. Does a lot for where he's from as well. So I mean, it's one of those things where it's like you can't knock the human. Obviously, he's had his adversity, but again, it's kind of that adverse storyline as far as that goes. And then the other guy, the franchise as I call him, Clayton Kershaw. He was asked. Someone asked him about the legacy, and what did Kersh say? I don't like that question. It doesn't matter. So again, these dudes, they knew what the task was at hand. And I mean, the thing is too, is a lot of the talking heads get in the way of really being able to kind of appreciate stuff. The jersey behind me here, that signed Messi jersey. I give you the example of Messi versus Cristiano Ronaldo from soccer. that whole media trying to put those two guys against them and all that stuff is kind of taken away from the beauty of everything. And that's kind of like what we ran into with Kershaw. Him not having that ring is, in a sense, kind of taken away a little bit of the beauty, if you will, of the process to get to this point. Because of all the sports, the two sports that are hardest to win a championship in are basketball and baseball. And that's because of how long the series are, baseball because of how long the season is on top of that, the grind that you have to put in there and the different levels you get to. And for people to kind of, essentially take that away is preposterous, because the individual accolades that Clayton Kershaw has, for the fact that people still don't think that he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, shame on you. But if you have a vote and you don't vote for him first ballot Hall of Fame because no one gets in unanimous, you're a part of the problem. And that's the honest truth. Because I heard people saying that Mariano shouldn't have been a first ballot unanimous guy. Garbage. That's the best closer ever. Kershaw's the best left-hander we have seen arguably since Koufax. And there's Randy Johnson. You hear about those guys. You hear about the other guys like, other pitchers in this era, Roy Halladay. You hear the Curt Schillings of the world. But Kurt isn't going to get in for other issues, right? But as far as Kershaw goes, dude's the 2014 NL MVP, 3-time Cy Young Award winner, 8-time All-Star, 2011 pitching Triple Crown, 2011 Gold Glove winner, 1 no-hitter, a career 2.43 ERA, I think 2,526 career strikeouts, and the most strikeouts in postseason history. And now he's won a title. So if you sit there and say that this dude does not deserve to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, like, don't even vote for anyone ever again. Honestly, that's the truth.
Well, I mean, look, I personally think Hall of Fame voting is a joke. For some, like Roberto Alomar, didn't get it in. I mean, on his first, it's just, Nolan Ryan isn't 100%. I mean, come on, guys. So the Hall of Fame voting is it, but I think that the narrative on Kershaw changed once we found out what happened in that 2017 World Series. I think if anybody's truly honest with themselves and they followed Kershaw, they know why. Okay, maybe there was a little bit to blame in his prior playoff failures, but you also had to take into account that he was put into positions where he was left out to dry. He was also on fumes in a lot of those playoffs because he had to carry the Dodgers through the regular season just to get into the playoffs. And then, you keep throwing him out there. So there was a lot of reasons for why he did not succeed. But after he came out about the cheating scandal, now, because I remember after the 2017 World Series, I was like, it's really hard for me to defend Kershaw because he blew a 4-run lead and then he blew a 3-run lead in Game 5 of the 2017 World Series. But now, knowing what we know, it's like, they cheated. They knew what was coming, and that's why he blew a 4-run lead and a 3-run lead. So, this could be different. Kershaw could be a 2-time champion now. So, yeah, for those who are, who want to make an argument that he's not a first ballot, look, he has lasting power, which is something that we don't talk about much. Remember, it was him and Lincecum at one point, and Lincecum burned out after like 3 or 4 years. But Kershaw is still pitching. Kershaw is still outlasting all his contemporaries. So, yeah, that guy is the first ballot Hall of Famer, no argument. And I have not been to the Hall of Fame, but I will make my first visit to the Hall of Fame when Kershaw gets in.
If you do get the opportunity to go to Cooperstown, go. Even if you don't agree with the way that the vote is handled or any of that stuff, go. I've been. It's one of those things where if you're a baseball fan and you're into baseball lore, I've been blessed to work in the game, be around guys, all that jazz. And I've never been to an induction ceremony. That's on my bucket list. When Kershaw gets inducted, that'll probably be when I go. But it's one of those things. Go, just go. Like don't even question it. Just go. If you love the game, go. But I'm kind of curious to hear one thing from you as we start to kind of transition going into next year. And then obviously, we haven't announced it yet, but we're going to do a podcast. We'll kind of bring up the details about that later. But this will be one thing that we'll talk about as the kind of the hot stove stuff comes about. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to say that this was the Dodgers cakewalk to a title as far as how the season went. And as far as, because it was a shortened season and all that stuff. Real quick, for me, a shortened season is a lot more difficult than a long season for a litany of reasons. One, because it's short, obvious, Tim McCarver take right there. But two, you're playing, 60 games in like 62 days, and then on top of that, you're essentially playing the same teams over and over again. When you have that much familiarity with each other, the level of competition is a little different. And on top of that, they went to ballparks that they don't typically go to. So for me, that was difficult. And then on top of that, for the regular series before the World Series, they didn't have any days off in between games aside from when they won a series. So with the Braves, for instance, they went 7 straight, right? Yeah. No days off, had 1 day essentially, and then they started the World Series. So for me, that's why I don't buy the cakewalk narrative because of how difficult it is. But I'm kind of curious to hear your take on it as someone that hasn't played at a high level, if you will, that doesn't look at it from the perspective that I look at it.
I don't think it's a cakewalk. I mean, I think, look, there were 33 states that were rooting against the Dodgers in the World Series. For those people that say it's a cakewalk, it's just straight hating. Okay, they are straight hating. They are looking. No one's going to remember this. No one's going to remember that it was, they only played 60 games that year. Look, in 1981, there was a strike. The Dodgers played the Astros. The Dodgers played the winner of the first half, whoever won the first half of the season. The Dodgers won the second half of the season. They played in a playoff, okay? And then after that, they played the Expos, and then they went to the World Series and beat the Yankees, okay? So no one sits there, and when they reference the 1981 Dodger World Series, there was a strike in the middle of that season. No one mentions that, right? A championship is a championship. Now, mind you, let's also take into account everything that you just said, that there were no off days, but also they had to play more rounds. They had that wild card round, which would have made it even harder because anybody could win in that series because it was 2 out of 3. Not only that, they won the World Series on a neutral site, and there is no other team, correct me if I'm wrong, in the history of Major League Baseball that can say that they won the World Series on a neutral site. So it's none of this home field advantage stuff. The Dodgers are the champions. For those Giant fans that are having a hard time right now, they can suck it. Those Yankee fans that are having a hard time, they can suck it, okay? Like that guy in Game 5 doing the DX thing. Everybody, look, the Dodgers are the champions. You guys have to learn to live with it the same way that we learned about losing for 7 years straight.
And as far as I know, it's the first neutral site World Series that I know of, at least.
Yes. Exactly.
Let's also not forget 1994. So 94, 95, there was a lockout. Yeah. So I mean, it's there, and even at that, there's, I believe it was in 72, if I'm not mistaken, there was a lockout season 2, which canceled a bunch of games. In 81, like you said, to your point. So I mean, for me, it's one of those where it's like, just stop. Like this, it's there. Not only was it a longer postseason, but it was just a deeper field, and honestly, in my opinion, it kind of weeds out who's the truth as far as that goes with more teams in the postseason, because obviously there's some teams that are going to kind of, limp in, if you will. And then from there, you kind of weed out who's the truth. And in the baseball purest sense, the 2 best teams weeded out the other teams to prove that they were the best from their respective leagues. And they showed it by, kind of being the chalk picks, if you will, to get to the World Series. So for me, it's garbage. Honestly, it's garbage, especially coming, from some fan bases that are just, if you will, a little ass hurt about what's gone down.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, and I thought this immediately once the news hit about Justin Turner, and I asked this to a couple of my friends, and I'm posing the question to both of you here. when I heard about the Justin Turner thing, I immediately first thought, when did the Dodgers know about this? Because if the Dodgers knew about this before the game and they allowed Justin Turner to go on that field, that's messed up. And I don't know if you can defend that. Now, I thought, okay, once that news was breaking, is that what's going to make this a champion? An asterisk. Are people going to sit there and go, oh, well, Justin Turner had COVID, but Justin Turner didn't do much in this game. And Justin Turner having COVID wasn't the reason why Snell got pulled out of the game. So I don't see how Justin Turner having COVID affected the game at all. I think the ramifications were later, and I think it makes Major League Baseball look bad. But in terms of the actual game that was played today, I don't think it affected it. But I can see fans, especially people that are not fans of the Dodgers, and you had mentioned, I think, Alonso, you brought it up, or maybe Roger did, that the Rays are going to try to use this as a reason to petition the loss. I mean, are they going to play it under protest? Are they saying they're playing this game under protest?
So I just sent a few texts, and I haven't heard anything back yet from anyone. I also looked to see if there's anything anywhere. I haven't seen anything yet. So Roger, if you have anything, by all means, chime in. I can't see you. I also can't see you either, Juan. So whatever. I'm just here. But
okay. I can see you, and you're looking good, Alonso. You're looking good. Well, for those of you who don't know, the timeline, unless it's changed, Jeff Passan reported that in the second inning of today's game, they had informed the Dodgers that Justin Turner's test was inconclusive.
Yeah, so here's the thing, too. So one thing to keep in mind. Unfortunately, I'm versed in these testing things just because we have an immunocompromised son. So they did PCR testing, which unfortunately, because of and it's a whole other big giant political thing that we won't get into. But PCR tests also have a tendency to either be false positives or not be right at all. And that's what they've been doing to these guys. They've been doing PCR tests. Essentially, they're able to test the amount of active viral load that is there at the time of the test. Now, like you said, it was inconclusive, and then they went about it how they did. Me personally, I wouldn't look at it like an asterisk, and that's not even being biased, because if it would have happened with the Rays, the COVID situation is so fluid that it's like, what do you do? And I'll give you an example of what that is. So outside of this, I work in concert promotion. And I do a lot of business here. I live in Salt Lake City, and we do stuff here. When Rudy Gobert tested positive, that changed everything in sports, right? I found out about Rudy testing positive a little bit before ESPN broke the thing, in part because of the events that I do, and it was one of those things where it's like, what do we do? Like what we don't know enough of this virus even now, aside from the fact that it's more than likely airborne, et cetera, right? So them trying to put him in isolation at that time was what you're supposed to do to help mitigate the thing, right? Because what ended up happening with that Rudy Gobert situation is Donovan Mitchell was the other party that tested positive, and there was one other person that tested positive, but a part of it was because they kept them all in isolation. So that's the one thing that these organizations know to do, is to throw these guys in isolation. Now, if I'm the Rays, am I pissed about that? Yes. But do I also understand that this is such a fluid situation with that side of it that I have to look at it like, if it would have been on the flip side, do I deal with it the same way? Yes. Because at the same time, let's say Randy Arozarena, heaven forbid it happens, but let's say he tests positive, right? What do the Rays do? Do the Dodgers also play it under protest? It's one of those things where it's like the situation's so fluid that it would almost kind of be a low ball move, if you will, to protest it, because it was inconclusive first, and that could obviously mean one of two things. But also all these organizations also know that these PCR tests aren't foolproof. So it's one of those things where it's like, can you even protest it? And then from there, who does it look worse on? And it looks worse on MLB at the end of the day.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just think the only thing is if the Dodgers knew before, and so far from what we know from the reporting, it doesn't seem like the Dodgers knew before the game. So as long as it doesn't come out that the Dodgers knew this before the game and they put Turner out there and put basically everyone at risk, then I don't see how this, affected the game at all. Because at the time that they were playing, and I don't think the Rays knew, but at the time they were playing, I don't think anybody knew what was happening. So you were still playing the game. I feel like it didn't affect the results of today's game. And it's just looking for an excuse to justify that it was your decision to pull Snell from the game when he was dealing. So I just, like I said, I hope under further investigation, the Dodgers it doesn't come out that the Dodgers did something that they shouldn't have done.
Well, and the other thing too is where it does look a little bad on JT. According to Passan, Manfred said that Justin Turner was removed from the game in the 7th and, quote, immediately isolated to prevent the spread of COVID. But he came out to take the picture. Not good optics.
No.
But I mean, JT also came out with his statement about whatever, that it sounds like it's an asymptomatic case as of now. But it's one of those things where it's like, the handling of it on both, on all three parties, truthfully, it's one of those things where it's so fluid that you kind of have to do what you have to do. But at the same time, it doesn't look good for MLB. I mean, this from the start of the season, even before this, with the Astros thing to now, and we'll talk about it more in the podcast stuff. It's just not been a good season for MLB ops.
No.
And this is kind of another thing where it's like, what the hell are you doing, right? So it's just not good optics, and it's just unfortunate because of what's gone on. But at the end of the day, it's just also just the circumstances of that. It's just like, when you're kind of put in that position, what do you do? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Roger, did you want to chime in on something?
So a source told me that if they would have came back with more positives, they would have postponed tomorrow. So to be honest, I wouldn't. You can't be mad at that because that's just the precautionary thing of it. Momentum or not, it doesn't matter. It's just one of those things where it's like you have to have everyone's safety at hand. And all things considered, if we're honest, obviously the Marlins, the Cardinals, they had all these crazy outbreaks and they were able to kind of keep it contained, if you will, to kind of get to this point. So you do have to give them credit where credit is due, where they're able to kind of, they didn't have any positive tests in the bubble as far as I know until today, unless I missed something somewhere. But I mean, all things considered, they were able to, even though we just kind of blasted them a little bit, they were able to kind of keep the bubble in control. And you have to give credit where credit is due because these times are weird.
Could you imagine if the Dodgers didn't win today and this series was going to have to be put on hold, and then they come back and who knows how long it had to be put on? What if they did wait 5 days to make sure, that there wasn't anybody like what this past weekend with what happened with the Raiders, with the whole offensive line, having to quarantine. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if it was Saturday or Sunday morning, they said, okay, they're good. Now go play a game. I just can't imagine that the World Series would be decided with a break like that. So it was fortunate. I mean, that's the one crappy thing about tonight, right? This was supposed to be our night. We should be celebrating. We should be, the Dodgers win, and we can still go ahead and do that. But the Justin Turner news, I did think kind of just put a little damper on the party in the sense, and I agree with you. When I was watching the TV and I saw Justin Turner out there for that photo, I was screaming at the television saying, what is he doing? What is he doing? And I mean, he was right next to Dave Roberts. And then at one point when they took the picture, he took his mask off. So it's just one of those things where being so irresponsible, and it came off just really completely tone deaf. to the rest of the country where, people are really are suffering, from this. There are people, there's people that are surviving, but there's just other people who didn't make it, out of this. So for them it seemed like for them not to take it as serious, that was a little disappointing. And I have to admit, that was just something I wish I hadn't have seen tonight.
And right on cue, Twitter is going off on people. Here's a tweet from someone. If Turner knew he had COVID and still showed up for Game 6, not only should he be permanently banned from MLB forever, but the Dodgers should retroactively forfeit and give their trophy to the Rays. So first of all, stop.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things where because of the bubble they're in, Roger, we were all talking about this off air. They're in a bubble. The other thing is, though, we have to remember the hotel that these players are staying at. Regular folk like you and I are still staying in that same hotel. They're just not allowed to go to certain parts of the hotel. I just stayed in a hotel for the last 6-ish days, and I took my precautions, didn't go to certain places, didn't touch things, sanitized, wiped stuff down, did the whole bit, wore my mask, but at the same time, it's like you can't control what other people do. So stuff happens, and you just have to control what you can and go from there. So that part of it I get, and also we have to remember, aside from the players who have like expecting wives and little kids, wives and girlfriends of family members that don't have kids, they're staying in a separate hotel. Like Clay Bellinger, who's there, and his family are staying in a separate hotel. They're not even staying at the same hotel the Dodgers are staying at. So, it's one of those things where it's, MLB is taking all the precautions that it can. It was nice to see Friedman and all those guys on the podium wearing masks. Yeah. So it's one of those things where, they're doing what they can. But to your point, it did appear a little tone deaf when JT came out. It was a little disappointing. I hope he kind of comes out and addresses that at some point. But I mean, for them to call for the Dodgers to forfeit the title, again, it's a weird time. We can't, we can't predict any of that stuff. And who could have predicted that JT would have tested positive in the middle of a game?
And this is not cheating. Okay, as I said, I don't see how Justin Turner having COVID affected the Rays' performance in this game. Okay, if anything, what Turner did, and this is assuming that he knew going into the game, which from the reporting, there is no proof that he knew. So again, the only thing that you could probably say about Justin Turner and the Dodgers would be it would be irresponsible that they put everyone at risk. But again, from the reporting, and we'll see, I'm sure this is a story that is ongoing. If things change later on, as I said, if it does come out that they knew and they put him on the field knowing that he had it, that's something that's going to be really hard for the Dodger organization to defend. But in terms of this, I don't see how him having COVID affected the Rays' performance. We're not talking about the cheating that the Astros did that was strictly involved in performance.
No, and that's but unfortunately this is just the environment that we're living in, and we're all trying to get through it, and here we are. Regardless, it still doesn't change the fact that the Dodgers are the 2020 World Champions.
Say it again, Alonso. Say it again.
The Los Angeles Dodgers of Los Angeles are the 2020 World Series champions. That's a shot at my former employer. But it's crazy to think too how for this entire year has been nuts, right?
Right.
And we're here and they've grinded it out. For the dude that I feel the happiest for, if I could, is Clayton Kershaw. We've harped on this a little bit because that dude is the franchise. That dude is the face. He's kind of, if you will, for comparison's sake, he's kind of the Kobe Bryant of this franchise, if you will, just because of what he's done. And he finally got them over the hump. Obviously, don't crucify me for comparing him. I'm just saying like iconic status, if you will, for the two. But for Kershaw to go out and did what he did, get two for the first time in a postseason period, get 2 victories, and it happens to be in the World Series, and he goes undefeated in the World Series, and was borderline great. And that's the one thing that I think is kind of going to get lost in translation, and that's why I want to bring it up, because we talked about it a little bit earlier about the Hall of Fame status, but I mean, for the Dodgers, they have this notable list of core players, if you will. Clayton Kershaw, Kenley Jansen, Corey Seager, Max Muncy, Mookie Betts, of course, Cody Bellinger. They're going to be good for a long time, and Kershaw still has a lot in the tank. And going into next year, because of that core, they're going to be the favorites as well. And I obviously, we're looking a little bit ahead, but most importantly, right now for Kershaw, and you could definitely see the relief on his face when they showed kind of like the clip of him and doing the thing. Aside from Kershaw and JT, we talked about JT a little bit there, and Kenley. Who do you think is just the most relieved outside of those guys that they finally won that is a player?
I'll chime into that, but before I go in there, I just want to say about your Kobe comparison. I don't think you're that far off in the sense of more along when Kobe won his 4th championship. When he won it without Shaq, where he had to go through that rough period where the Lakers were down, demanding the trade, and then he goes out there and he wins it. And then also that the 5th championship, when he beat the Celtics, he didn't have a good Game 7. To some people, he might have had a terrible Game 7, and it was Ron Artest that brought it home. So I don't think your Kobe comparison to Kershaw is that far off. In terms of who I'm happiest for, other than those 3 guys that you mentioned, this might be a little out of left field, but Petey Baez. Because Petey Baez takes a lot of heat. He took a lot of heat, actually, during this series. He's taking it under different playoff series. The whole thing where he worked so slow before, and they were trying to speed up his delivery and stuff like that. It's guys like that, they hear it, and especially since he's a foreign player, there may be the language barrier. To get attacked the way that he got attacked and not be able to defend yourself, because you never hear Petey get interviewed. Petey, it wasn't too long ago that he would get booed at Dodger Stadium whenever he would come in for a relief appearance. So if I'm happy, other than Kershaw, Turner, and Jansen, it's Petey Baez, because that guy was always put in terrible positions. Sometimes he would succeed. More than likely he didn't. But for him to have this moment and be a part of a championship team, I'm happy for La Mula. Congratulations.
I have 2 dudes. 3, actually. They're kind of like the low-key guys. Jock Peterson, who was going to get traded to my former employer, but then wasn't, then he was, then he wasn't, and now he's a Dodger. Yeah. But he had himself a hell of a playoff series, or postseason. And he stepped up to the plate, and even through all the adversity, because if there's, people are quick to kind of, to blast him a little bit, if you will, for not being able to hit righties and right. Not being the best defensive outfielder in the world. He's kind of lazy, some people say. He stepped up huge. He stepped up gigantic. Kike Hernandez, who doesn't get a lot of praise. He's definitely kind of the clubhouse guy, if you will, but he's a super sub and can play just about every position out there, right? Had himself solid pinch hits. And I hope that the Dodgers keep him. I really do. And we'll dive into that more on when we do the podcast. But I hope they keep him because of the clinch, the clutch hits, if you will. But for him to step up huge and was able to kind of get the rally going to get the Dodgers to the World Series, gigantic. And then number 3, a guy that doesn't get a lot of praise, if you will, but he goes out and just kind of grinds it out. Max Muncy. Max Muncy is not a guy that's going to hit for average. He's not going to hit 270, 300, or whatever, but he's going to give you productive outs. He's going to give you productive at bats. He's going to get you home runs, of course. And he showed it in this World Series. I think in the World Series he hit like 370, if I'm not mistaken. He showed up, and that's what's important, and the intangibles that you need when you kind of build a team to kind of get to where it's at. Because obviously you have Corey Seager, you have Cody Bellinger, you have Mookie Betts. You have these guys that are going to be here for a long time, hopefully with Corey and Cody, right? But these guys, they're not making Mookie Betts money, and they're, I think Jock Peterson's salary this year before the adjustment was like $5 million. Kike was in the range, same. And for a Major League Baseball player, that's not a crazy amount of money. So for those three guys to kind of step up and do what they did, it's for me like if there was a co MVP of anything that's like tier two, that would be him. That would be those guys because they were able to kind of carry the team and get us to where we're at. Because if those guys don't step up huge in the situations they came up in, I honestly don't know if we're here.
Well, and another guy that stepped up big for me after failure was Dustin May. I mean, I think it was nice to see him bounce back, and I'm really excited about his future because I think this experience is only going to make him stronger in the next years. And I think our pitching is, I mean, we're going to be pretty soon be able to say that Kershaw is our number 3, number 4. And it's just, again, Andrew Friedman, the job that he's doing every year, making sure this team is competitive. It's an embarrassment of riches. It's just nice that it finally paid off in a championship.
If there's anyone that got themselves a 10-year deal out of this World Series, it's Andrew Friedman.
Yeah.
That dude isn't going anywhere. Essentially, whatever, he's kind of like Billy Beane. But it's like, how much do you want? What do you want? What do you need? We'll make it happen. And the crazy thing is, they already do that for him. He's already, they don't really disclose executive salaries, but he is known as the highest paid executive in all of baseball. So, and he's only going to get richer just based on that. But at the end of the day, if the Dodgers, and again, we'll dive into this in the podcast as well, the embarrassment of riches that the Dodgers have going into next year and further down the road, it's insanity. Because again, the Dodgers are going to be the favorites going into next year, even if they get rid of those 3 guys that we talked about, or those 4 guys that we just talked about. Peter Baez, Jock, and Kike. If they get rid of those 3 guys, or if they decide to make a move to trade away a Muncy, something like that, I don't foresee it happening, not a hot take of any kind, but the Dodgers do crazy stuff all the time that even if they did, they would still be a perennial frontrunner. And that's what's insane about the depth about the Dodgers.
And not only that, and yes, we'll definitely get into this more in off-season talk, but one of the things that I don't think is talked about enough is they got a lot of money coming off the books. So these guys not only have this young core, but they're going to have money to go spend to go plug those holes. So, yeah, it's, A-Rod gets a lot of heat, and I think it's deservedly so. But if anybody watched those post-game shows, I think maybe, I don't know if it was Roger or maybe it was someone else who had said, because he said it, was that the Dodgers window was closing. He said that. Today, after the show, he started referring to the Dodgers as a dynasty. So it's like, make up your mind, A-Rod. Is the window closing for these guys? Or are these guys going to, have another run? I'm excited. Not only because we won the championship, we've got the monkey out. I mean, could you imagine now that they have the monkey off their back and now going into postseasons in the future, they're not going to be gripping because they never won one. Now they have one in their pocket. Could this relay into more championships?
I've always believed that if you've kind of sought it out and you know the process and you can get one, it only makes you hungrier. And I believe that with this core. And the thing is I think they have the setup in order to do that. And let's not forget, too, I'm not a fan of sabermetrics. I'm not a fan of data analytics. I'm not. However, I understand why they use those algorithms to build some of these things out. And this is proof of it, right? To the point, and we'll start to wrap this up here. Dallas Keuchel tweeted, "Computers always know best." I'm just gonna say this, Dallas. Listen, man, like, we're lucky enough to have worked in a fraternity that prides itself on what goes on inside the clubhouse, and we keep it that way. We keep it close to the vest. I'm not going to come out here and put anyone's stuff on blast. But the thing is, my man, is you have an asterisk. And if you want to sit there and say stupid shit like that, that's fine. But understand that you don't have the best rep either, dude. And same goes for Charlie Morton. Same goes for Verlander. Same goes for a lot of those guys. So it's one of those things where it's like you kind of have to protect your neck at this point because you were put on blast and exposed. And that's just the end all be all. And whether we like it or not, the computers may always, to a certain degree, know best, but at the same time, you can't talk out of line either because you got caught up. And that's just the honest truth. It's the honest truth. But as we kind of go in to wrap this up, oh, by the way, I just saw a tweet. Speaking of A-Rod, A-Rod says, and you and I will have to talk off air about my A-Rod experiences, but he says at a macro level, these front offices are really running our game. The Ivy Leaguers are getting an F in this class called playoff baseball.
Yeah, he said that on the postgame show.
Yeah, and I'm just like, bro, like, it's analytics. Unfortunately, to a certain degree, is the future of the game. Whether we like it or not, that's just gonna, the Dodgers have, if not the largest, like the second largest analytics department in all of baseball. So it's one of those things where it's like it's not going to change. It's not going to go away. That's just where we're at, right? I'm not a fan of it. I don't understand all of those stats, and I will humbly admit that, right? Do I know and understand that they have value for everything that's going on in the game? Absolutely, but I'm not going to look at them like the end all be all, just like I know the Dodgers don't either. And there's proof of that. In this World Series, there was moments where Dave Roberts managed with his gut. And how often did you and I talk about on this very show that I hope everyone was watching instead of A-Rod's asinine comments, as far as macro level stuff? Get out of here, man. With how concerned we were that the Dodgers might have gotten too cute, and we're going to end up managing based on the analytics tonight. I don't think he managed on the analytics tonight. I think he managed based on gut because of who he used from the bullpen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think we're getting the hook.
Are we?
Yeah.
I can't see anything. Honestly, I can't see anything.
Okay, yeah, we're getting the hook. It's time to end the show. So let everybody know about the podcast. Let everybody know about our future here, and let's wrap this thing up.
So we'll talk about it later. We'll announce it on the Twitter machine, but we're gonna do a podcast for the off season. So you'll see our from this Twitter account here, Dodgers Beat, where we'll ask for you guys to interact with us, and we do want to thank you all for interacting with us as well during this postseason. This was kind of a whim thing by and this is actually what I want to end it with. If it wasn't for Roger starting the movement and Roger, the voice in the sky, to get Frank McCourt out as ownership, like I don't think a lot of the fan base really understands the importance of having someone like Roger as a fan kind of get a movement going. Guggenheim doesn't come in. Honestly, it's the honest truth. That's one of the reasons why when the opportunity arose for myself to do this, I kind of jumped at it, just because to have this blog and to have the following that this blog has, not for me. I don't give a damn about any of that. It's more of it's a community that was able to kind of get this going, and it's super humbling to be a part of something this special that was able to kind of get the heave ho going to get this to where we're at now. So I'm going to personally lobby the Dodgers to give Roger a ring, because if it wasn't for Dodgers Beat doing what they did and to kind of get that movement going, I don't know if McCourt comes out. So if you follow this page, if you watch these shows, please give a shout out to Roger when you can. Thank him, because again, it might have been a small piece of the history and the puzzle to kind of get to where we're at now. But I honestly don't think if McCourt is still owning the team, we don't get here by any stretch. So it's one of those things where getting the heave ho to Frank and co, even though they're still in the parking lot or whatever. It's a huge thing. And again, I'm humbled that I'm able to come on here and talk all the shit that I can talk, and Roger doesn't stab me for it, because there's a lot of stuff that we could probably get caught up in, but at the same time, I have a union card, so whatever. But it's been humbling, and we appreciate all the interaction. Juan obviously came on as a special correspondent, and it's turned into something a little more, and I thank you for that as well. And by all means, please follow us. Our Twitter handles are somewhere. I can't see anything, so I apologize. If you follow this page, obviously you're still watching us. Thank you. It means a lot to us. We thank you for your interaction. We thank you for crashing our website. So I wasn't expecting that, but here we are. And if you're out on Whittier Boulevard by chance watching this and you set a palm tree on fire, don't call me for bail money. I just ask that you celebrate peacefully, you socially distance, you wear your mask, and most importantly, one political thing I'm going to say: go vote. Like if you're pissed about what's going on, go vote tomorrow or next week or tomorrow, whatever, wherever you live, because it's going to help out a ton. But at the end of the day, it's been a weird year. They made a point of it. We all stood together for social injustice, and here we are. And everyone, please stay safe, please stay healthy, and we'll kind of give you the details on the podcast as they come out. But from your invisible boy Juan and myself, because again I can't see anything, I want to thank you guys. And Juan, let's take a shot.
Yes, let's take a shot. And while we're taking a shot, I just want, for those of you that aren't familiar with the Rogers story, everything that Alonso just talked about, there is a documentary that I made about this called Blue Revolution that is available on YouTube for free. So check it out, and that'll give you Rogers' whole story about Save the Dodgers and what he did to get Frank McCourt run out of town and bringing in new ownership. So that's Blue Revolution. It's on YouTube. It's free. And
please,
I'm holding up my liquor here. Let's take a shot, Alonso.
Let's do it. To the Dodgers finally doing the thing that we had been waiting so long for, you longer than me, to get to this point. Salud.
Salud.
Forget how much whiskey burns. But you know what? It's a good burn because the Dodgers won.
That's right. Good burn.
So if you're out and about, don't drink and drive. Please stay safe. Please don't cause a ruckus. Stay safe. And on that note, we will see you guys here soon in the off season. Like we talked about that podcast, we'll drop the details on that. We don't even have a damn name yet. I'll be honest with you, but we'll figure it out. But in the interim, again, please stay safe and go celebrate peacefully. And we will talk to you down the road. Thank you again. Have a good night.